Archives of the state governments. The source material in the state archives comprise the records of I. The former British Indian provinces, e. the erstwhile princely states which were incorporated in the Indian Union after 1947, and e. the foreign administrations other than those of the British. Apart from these, the records of those Indian powers which were taken over by the British, for instance, the archives of the Kingdom of Lahore, popularly known as Khalsa Darbar records from 1800 to 1849, are important source material. It forms the most valuable single source for the study of Maratha history for a period of almost a century before the fall of the Peshwas. For studying the history of the princely states of Rajasthan, viz., Jaipur, Bikaner, Jodhpur, Udaipur, etc., the archives of these states, now housed in the Rajasthan State Archives at Bikaner, are valuable. Similarly, the history of Dogra rule from 1846 in Jammu and Kashmir can be studied in the valuable collection of state papers housed at Jammu. The other significant archives of the princely states are those sources for the history of modern India 5-6, a brief history of modern India of Gwalior, Indore, Bhopal and Rewa, all in Madhya Pradesh, Travancore and Kochi in Kerala, Mysore in Karnataka and Kolhapur in Maharashtra. Archives of 3 presidencies. The early records of Fort Williams, Bengal Presidency, were lost during the sack of Calcutta in 1756, but the archives of the Bengal Presidency after the British victory at Plassey have survived more or less in a complete series, which are partly available in the National Archives of India and partly in the State Archives of West Bengal. The records of the Madras Presidency begin from AD 1670 and include records of the Governor and Council of Fort St. George. In these records there is plenty of information bearing on the rise of the English East India Company as a political power in the south and in the Deccan, including the Anglo-French struggle and the English conflicts with other Indian powers. The archives of Bombay Presidency, housed in the Maharashtra Secretariat Record Office, Mumbai, are extremely useful in studying the history of Western India, Maharashtra, Gujarat, Sindh and the Kannada-speaking districts of the erstwhile Bombay Presidency which were incorporated in Mysore in 1956. Archives of other European powers. The archives related to the Portuguese preserved in Goa, mainly belonging to the period from 1700 to 1900, are valuable for the history of Portuguese possessions in India. The orders and dispatches from Lisbon received in Goa and the responses and reports dispatched from India to Portugal constitute the most significant historical material among the Portuguese archives. The Dutch records of Kochi and Malabar are in the Madras Record Office and those of Chinsara in the State Archives of West Bengal. The French archives of Chandernagore and Pondicherry, now Puducherry, were taken to Paris by the French authorities before they relinquished these settlements. The archives of the Danish possessions were also transferred to Copenhagen when the Dutch sold Tranquebar and Serampore to the English East India Company in 1845. The remaining Danish records, mainly relating to Tranquebar, 1777 to 1845, are now housed in the Madras Record Office. Judicial records housed in the Madras Record Office, the archives of the Mayor's Court at Fort St. George, beginning from AD 1689, are the earliest available judicial archives. The pre-Plassey records of the Mayor's Court at Fort Williams have been lost, but those for the years 1757 to 73 are kept in the record room of the Calcutta High Court, along with the archives of the Supreme Court of Bengal, 1774 to 1861. Similarly, the records of the Mayor's Court at Bombay established in 1728 are available in the Maharashtra Secretariat Record Office which also has the custody of the archives of the Bombay Recorder's Court and the Supreme Court. Apart from containing the proceedings and minutes, this category of records contains copies of wills, probates, and letters of administration which are useful for genealogical studies and for investigations pertaining to the state of society and economic conditions in the respective regions. Published archives. The most significant archival publications are the parliamentary papers which include many excerpts from the records of the East India Company and the Government of India under the Crown. The proceedings of the Indian and provincial legislatures, the weekly gazettes published by the central and the provincial governments and collections of laws and regulations issued from time to time also serve as useful source material for historical research. Sources for the history of modern India 7-8 A brief history of modern India. Private archives comprise papers and documents of individuals and families of note, who played a significant role in the development of modern India. The papers of eminent leaders of the nationalist movement and the records of organizations like the Indian National Congress are housed in the Nehru Memorial Museum and Library in New Delhi. The archives of banks, business houses and chambers of commerce are extremely helpful in the study of economic changes. Foreign repositories. A vast body of historical material related to the history of modern India is available in the repositories of erstwhile imperialist powers, who ruled in different parts of the Indian subcontinent, as well as in some other countries too. In England, the India Office records, London and the records kept in the British Museum are very valuable. The India Office Records possesses various important documents, the minutes of the courts of directors and the General Court of the East India Company and various committees constituted from time to time, the minutes and correspondence of the Board of Control or the Board of Commissioners for the Affairs of India, and the records of the Secretary of State and the India Council. The British Museum possesses collections of papers of British viceroys, secretaries of states and other high-ranked civil and military officials who were posted in India. The archives of the missionary societies, for instance, of the Church Missionary Society of London, provide insight into the educational and social development in pre-independent India. The Archives Nationales, Paris, and the archives of the French Ministries of Foreign Affairs, Colonies and War, have records that throw light on the history of French possessions as well as other socio-political conditions. The records of the Dutch East India Company is available in sources for the history of modern India 9 Rijksarchief, The Hague, and that of the Danish and Portuguese are kept in Copenhagen and Lisbon, respectively. Apart from the archives of the European nations, the archives preserved in Pakistan are of utmost importance. The West Pakistan Record Office, Lahore, Record Office, Peshawar, records available in Sindh, etc., give information about the regional history of the Indian subcontinent besides shedding light on India's relations with Afghanistan, Iran and other neighboring countries in the colonial era.